I really expect some good things out of this TCU defense, especially against Houston. And we'll get into kind of a preview of the Houston game here in a minute. But if you can do that, you kind of replicate your performance, obviously against a lesser opponent in Nicholls. But going into Houston, who is coming off of, and I guess we can touch on it now, probably the worst loss, or maybe arguably the worst loss last week, and maybe of all this entire season so far for a Power 5 opponent against a Group of 5 opponent. Houston lost to Rice in double overtime. Rice had not beaten Houston in 13 years. Obviously, Rice and Houston both in the same city, so they play each other every year. They play for a trophy. It's all fun and games, but it's not really a rivalry because Houston's just been so dominant. But this past Saturday, Houston goes into Rice. There was probably like 2 people there. There were not that many people there. I don't know if y'all saw the scenes of them rushing the field. There were not that many people. But Rice, storms out to that 28-0 lead. Houston comes back and ties it, sends it to overtime, but they just can't get it done, and Rice comes home with the win. And to just be completely frank with you, if you're a Houston fan, that loss is inexcusable. That is an inexcusable loss to a team that is, on paper, inferior to you. And now they're going to have to come in. It's their first game in the Big 12. Very interested to see how that's handled. It's a home game at night on Fox. So what is the vibes going to be for the Houston team? Are they either going to slink down and give up, right? Which is certainly something that you don't want to see for a team early on in the season, or they're going to rise to the challenge and face again. TCU's going to have a target on their back this year, no matter how they're doing, because they are the reigning national runner-ups, no matter what. And so, and it's their first Big 12 game too for Houston. So there's a lot going on in Houston town right now, and Houston and TCU might be walking into. There's just a lot that they're walking into. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I think heading into this Houston game, right, on paper for TCU, you would expect nothing less but a win to come away from Houston. But just like you said, this is going to be a huge test, not just for TCU, but for Houston as well, right? I mean, this is a TCU team that is young, inexperienced, and is going on the road for the first time this season to open up Big 12 conference play. And then on the other hand, you have a Houston team that is going to be amped for their first ever Big 12 game. And so you're going to see both of these teams with a lot to prove. And then you look at Houston's head coach, Dana Holgorsen. Seth, you and I were talking about it yesterday and today. He's on the hot seat. And especially after this 43-41 loss, yes, they beat UTSA to start the season. Good for Houston. They did what they're supposed to do. But this loss to Rice is huge. And, for Dana Holgorsen, there's definitely going to be some talk about him and his future possibly.
Yeah, I could totally see this game being pretty sloppy, if I'm being honest. We've talked about Houston losing to Rice. I don't know. For me personally, it's hard for me to imagine that TCU just blows them out of the water, and it's hard for me to also imagine Houston. They could win this game, but I think it's probably going to be a low-scoring defensive battle where TCU hopefully comes out on top, but I could totally see like a 21-13 or 24-20 kind of like where the points aren't coming very easy and it's just not great football, but who knows? I could be totally wrong about that. But yeah, there is a lot to prove for Houston and for TCU, so that's certainly something to look forward to.
Houston quarterbacked by Donovan Smith, former Texas Tech Red Raider. So TCU has seen the quarterback for the Houston Cougars before. They saw him last season. And, he was kind of just the guy who was used on fourth downs. I remember a lot for Tech last year. Yep. They brought him in those like fourth and short spots. Some really gutsy calls from Joey McGuire to try and get them back in the ballgame that ended up costing Tech the ballgame, but that's neither here nor there. But Donovan Smith was that kind of guy. He came in. He was essentially all right, line up behind center, and we're going to push you for a first down kind of person. But he's the starting quarterback at Houston. And what's tricky about predicting how a quarterback like he plays is like, one, he's a little streaky, and two, he's fast. He's got the speed, and running quarterbacks are always a little bit more difficult to defend. But for a 3-3-5 defense too, where if you're not filling those holes, there might be some holes for the quarterback to run through. It's going to be interesting to see how TCU handles him specifically. But the good news for him, and this might be a discussion throughout the season is TCU does have some film on Donovan Smith, and Sonny Dykes is familiar with Dana Holgorsen too.
Exactly. And I mean, Sonny Dykes and Dana Holgorsen go way back. If I'm not mistaken, they coached, it was either 06 or 07 when they were both coaches under Mike Leach. And I mean, they know each other incredibly well. Yeah, I mean, even in the press conference, Sonny Dykes had these words to say about Dana.
You know, when I went to Kentucky, I used to hear Mike talk about Dana. He called him Little Dana, and he always talked about Little Dana all the time. And I'm like, who's this Little Dana guy he's always talking about? And then, you know, had a chance to meet him, and then we had a chance to work together. And, you know, I loved working with him. I mean, look, truly, Dana feels like part of our family in a kind of a strange sort of way. I mean, I know his kids. You know, his son Logan's, I think the world of him, and we got a lot of respect for Dana. And you know, I think it's just a relationship that goes back a long time, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there.
Yeah, so right there, a lot of mutual respect, I think, is the phrase to wrap that kind of that talk up between Holgorsen and Dykes. I mean, it's two guys again that go way back, and they have respect for each other and for each other's programs and how they each came up through different ways of coaching and kind of have found they've found their own teams and established themselves. Really excited for this game. Again, both of these teams have a lot to prove, and Dana Holgorsen is on the hot seat. So I mean, these two teams will have a lot to go at. But kind of just getting back to the game part of it, right? The TCU offense needs to take advantage of this Houston defense. Now, I'm more worried about the TCU defense based off of our performance against Nicholls. It didn't necessarily make me feel much better after the Colorado game, but if there's any part that TCU needs to take advantage of, I would say it's taking advantage of the Cougars' defense.
Yeah, the defense. I mean, you just got to look to the final score against Rice, and you're like, "Yikes!"
Yeah.
Okay, well, 40+ points against the Rice Owls. You're a little leaky there, aren't you? Defense. TCU's got to take advantage of it. They took advantage against Colorado to a certain extent, right? I mean, you score 42 points, you think that's good enough to win a football game. TCU's averaging 41.5 points right now.
Yep.
To the first two games, which usually you would, if you looked at a team and they're averaging 40+ points a game, you'd say they're probably 2-0.
Yep.
But the defense is really going to have to step it up. You said it, Ian. We're interested to see the linebackers really going to have to be speedy with Donovan Smith because, you know, we talked about it in that Colorado game. There just wasn't that, you know, quickness to get to the edge or to find or to get those guys on the outside. That's going to have to happen against Houston, and it might be, you know, a really, really rowdy environment. So they're going to have to be amped. It's going to be really interested to see how everyone handles that. That's kind of, I feel like, the theme of this Houston preview is how is everyone going to handle all of, like, the outside pressure that is on them. TCU is 1-1, not where they expected to be. Houston also 1-1, not where they expected to be. Oh, also it's your first Big 12 game. Good luck.
Yep.
And the first road game for TCU as well, which is part of the reason why I think the offense should perform well, but they might fall a little short of expectations. In my opinion, I'm not saying that's going to happen, and I don't think you have to agree or but that's just personally my opinion. So we'll see what happens. But I'm looking forward to this game. I think it could be a good indication of what's to come for TCU.
Well, TCU is going to travel down to take on the Houston Cougars and Dana Holgorsen. That's going to be kickoff on Saturday at 7 p.m. But quickly before we wrap this up, let's get on our score prediction. So I guess I'll start, but I think this will be a lot closer than we want. Maybe I'm taking this a little too hard, but I'm going to say TCU 27-24.
Yeah, that's similar to what I have. I have 24-17 with the Horned Frogs winning.
TCU 31, Houston 21.
Okay. All right. So again, all of us picking TCU just like we always do. I enjoy that. Hoping that the Horned Frogs can put together another great win, and this time on the road down in Houston. Again, that's going to be kickoff on Saturday night at 7 p.m. TCU looking for their second win of the season. Stay here on 88.7 The Choice as we've got another hour and 40 minutes left to go here on Riff Ram Review. You're listening to Riff Ram Review on 88.7 The Choice.